And so over time, you've had to develop your understanding around periodization. Would I be correct in saying that? From the early days, you had a really good
Oh
understanding
yeah,
of physiology and how
yeah,
to manage people, but you've
yeah.
really had to learn periodization. So, what does a typical training week kind of look like in under Donny's regime, and how did this change between obviously pre-season and then in season? We know that during that pre-season we really ramp up the intensity um, to try and get more adaptation out of your players, and then during
Yeah,
season
yeah,
it's all about recovery. But talk
yeah.
us through that.
Look. As the simplest way to describe it is that every energy system has a life, and you can deplete it, and then you got to regenerate it. If you deplete it, it can only stay depleted for so long. If that depletion stays for too long, it takes longer to come up. So you got to get those timings right. We also know that in a muscular sense and skeletal sense with the body, you're going to get DOMs and you're going to get, a growth response, but you got to get some discomfort in that too. So what we do is we literally build all our programming in the preseason around hitting these systems as frequently as we can, but then changing so that another one can get hit and that other one is reloading. Now, we can do that 6 days a week because there's no game. Now, when you play a game, every single system will be depleted because they're going to give everything they've got, to be wonderful to get, blood tests of all those Origin players after the speed and of that game, totally unnecessary, so we wouldn't have to do that. But you would see some really big physiological markers shifting from start
Inflammatory
to finish.
markers and
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
So it's about getting that right. So that's what real periodization is making sure that they ebb and flows and you're getting them to the right place. And then in terms of strength and growth, when you've got these big blocks where you can afford to go heavy, get this adaptation, set them down a bit, then start going again so that you're getting another stimulus and growth. So in the season, obviously the game pops up, but not only the game. In there, now you've got a lot of other mental things occurring because now you're getting there's a lot riding on this game. There's futures, there's positions, where you are on the team. There's finance. There's a whole lot of stuff happening on how well you present and play in that game, how well you compete, right? So what happens there is we break the week down, we shorten everything up, but it's intense. So you're still getting 2 or 3 field sessions a week, but your weight sessions might change. So you might only get one big, heavy bang for buck strength session. Then you'll get a nice, hard, heavy power session. So you're hitting both parts of your system in terms of anaerobic, aerobic, phosphate, with the lift, strength, endurance, and power. But then as you get closer to the game, you're starting to finesse, work more on bouts of speed and bouts of neural activity, execution, response, and then you're able to just temper out enough so that those systems are at a good load before you go into the match. So you're never going to deplete anything completely in season because you don't want to take the risk of having to get it to come back up. It takes too long. And like for you and I, so for a layman, anybody just listening who's not an athlete, you go out and train, okay? If you don't eat for 3 hours after it, then obviously it's going to take you a lot longer to come back to normal and feel better, right? But if you have something to eat not long after it, even if it's a little bit just to kick your blood glucose, you're going to find within a couple of hours you're actually back in a good place. Yeah. So that's where our recovery methods come in. So we periodize around energy systems, right, and effort and load. And then when we get to the season, we really refine those. Keep the intensity high, allow for the mental fatigue, and break down those strength elements to power and really specific ones so that you can get them into the game. Because you got to remember, when you're on the field, you're using accels, decels, using a lot of strength out there too, tackles, wrestling, and then so and all that rolls into these weeks, and then you cycle the weeks so that you're looking at how many weeks in a row you're playing, training, you got your GPS, your Ks, your heart rates, your heart rate variabilities, like you said. There's a lot of information that you have, and then you can start literally specifically periodizing for each player.
I did a bit of work with the Generation Blue Waratahs youth performance.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think a lot of what they were talking about even was, leading into the matches on the weekend, they would kind of ease off the eccentrics. So you see a lot of like box squats or, trap bar deadlifts without the eccentric,
Without the eccentric
lowering
load,
the weight to minimize that damage to the muscle. And then you probably see a lot more of that eccentric component during a preseason when you're trying to load up that muscle on the players, that strength.
Well, the eccentric gives you some good size, because the eccentric is a longer holding of a contraction, through a movement. So once you we pretty much drop the eccentrics pretty much right through the season, but we keep or even increase our power drive and the weight on the clean and the snatch and the pull. However, we drop off the eccentrics because that's a more taxing type of contraction.